10 years ago, Peloton not only revolutionized the fitness market, but normalized the software subscription industry. The idea that you could sell consumers a piece of hardware, strap a screen on it, and then continue to bill them to use the hardware they already bought every single month. In retrospect, it sounds like lunacy, but it's been completely normalized. We do it all the time. And the fitness industry copied that in spades. I mean, recently, last year, Mirror sold to Lululemon for $500 million, and it is literally a mirror with a TV behind it. What? Now, in recent weeks and recent months, people are starting to twirl their mustaches and scratch their beards and go, is this really a good, sustainable business model? But for a while, it was very, very popular. Last year, when I expanded my smart home, I also decided to build a smart gym. My wife is very fitness oriented and I am not. My metabolism is slowing down and I decided that I needed to get into shape for pretty much the first time ever. And well, let me tell you, it was really difficult to find good equipment because most of it had turned into this software subscription model shenanigans. But I also liked the idea that some of these products offered. They weren't just a dumb piece of equipment that only worked if you knew how to use it. And so I selected 3 pieces of smart home gym equipment that I suspected would be a value add. Yes, they cost money every month, but I thought they would improve the quality of my workouts as someone who's frankly not very skilled. Well, it's been a few months and I want to give you a report on how those pieces of hardware have actually panned out. My equipment litmus test requires 3 questions be answered. Number 1, does the device actually need to be smart? Does it benefit from it? I would submit that a Peloton doesn't. Number 2, is the subscription price monthly worth it when compared to other services on the market? And then number 3, if you stop paying the subscription price, does that fancy pants piece of technology turn into a paperweight? Now let me make one thing very clear before we talk about any of the equipment. It is not a good value relative to a cheap gym. If you are looking to maximize your spend, smart equipment is not where it's at. Sign up for Planet Fitness, it's like 15 bucks a month and you're set. This equipment, even if it's paid off, even if you ignore the purchase cost of these, is sometimes $30 to $50 a month, which can get you not only entrance to a decent gym in most places, but sometimes a gym with a training session or 2. So that's something to keep in mind as we look at these pieces of equipment. Walking backwards is hard. Let's go to the gym. The first piece of equipment is by far the most expensive, but I also think that it's probably the best value and it's definitely my favorite. It's the Tonal. Think of this thing as like a Bowflex on crack. Because yes, it is a cable machine, but unlike most cable machines and unlike most free weights, you can't really use acceleration and momentum to ease the burden of the rep. This uses electromagnets and the weight is a persistent weight throughout the entire duration of the rep, which makes it a very unique and very challenging experience. It also means that the weight per arm is less than you think you might want. It's 100 pounds max, but trust me, that's a lot of friggin' weight. There are some guys that are ripped on YouTube that are using this thing shy of that 100 pound limit. I'm like in the 40s for squats and it freaking kills me. So, and I can lift 40 pounds. Okay, I'm not that weak, almost, but not quite. Now, let me show you where this thing really excels, and that is in the just sheer quantity of movements that you can perform. We'll talk about the classes in a minute, but if you come into the movements section, you will find that there are 209 movements that you can perform with all of the accessories that are included with the machine. You've got your handles, you've got a rope, you've got your bar, you've got a bench, there's mats and rollers, and all of these movements can be achieved with these accessories. So let's, for example, use a goblet squat. Now this machine has, as I mentioned, 2 arms and they are adjustable in a lot of different ways. You can adjust the angle, you can adjust the rotation, and you can adjust the height. And what's great about the machine is it tells you how to do it. So if I come in here to goblet squat, I tell the machine how many reps I want, what weight modes I want. Not gonna get into that, but you can change the feel of that electromagnetic weight. And then I can choose whether or not I want assistance. Spotter functionality is exactly what it sounds like. If you let go of the weight, it detects that and doesn't allow the handle to crash into the bottom of the machine. Then there's burnout. Burnout is clever because what it allows for is the ability to kind of lessen the weight that you're experiencing if it doesn't think that you can finish the set. So if you have 10 reps that you need to do and you're on rep 7 and you're really struggling, it will behind the scenes lessen how much weight there is to get you to finish that set rather than focusing on you lifting the exact same amount of weight every single time. So let's start this move. We can see how the move is performed. We can also see a safety video for this specific squat, which is pretty cool. And then once we go into the machine, it's pretty simple. I've got, again, a demo model down here in the bottom corner that shows me how to do it. And then as I move the equipment, it will also demonstrate where it is relative to its position that it's supposed to be in. So as you can see, once I lock the angle into position, that turns green. I've got my height all the way down at the bottom, and then rotation doesn't matter on this specific move. Sometimes it doesn't care where things are if it is not persistent to the move. And then you grab the smart handle. This uses a very clever T-locking mechanism. You just stick it in, you turn it 90 degrees, and it's locked. To unlock, you push in, twist out. In, out, in, out. It's so simple. And then these also have buttons. They are all Bluetooth, which is pretty cool, on top of having Bluetooth functionality for Bluetooth audio and Bluetooth via the Apple Watch. There is really, really, really good health kit integration, which is excellent because not only does it track your heart rate to adjust or increase or decrease the intensity of the workout, but it syncs all of that information to Apple Health Kit. Your rings will get completed with more accuracy, which is amazing because you want that to be accurate rather than just selecting a generic weightlifting workout on the Apple Watch. Pretty cool. There's also control, like you can change the weight on the Apple Watch app. It's neat. But once I'm in here, it is selected 46 pounds. That's not just random. That's based on what it believes me capable of performing. If I lose muscle mass, it'll decrease my starting weight. If I get better, it'll increase it. Right now, I'm at 46 pounds, which doesn't sound like very much. It might not be, but it feels like hell to me. So I'm gonna get into position. I push the weight with this button and that will turn it on and you'll see it lock into position. Here we go. Oh, and once the weight's loaded, I can perform the squats. It provides live form feedback, so if I do a crappy job, it'll tell me what I need to improve. And then to turn the weight off, I push that same button again. And that's pretty much all there is to it. At least that's all there is to the machine. What do you get for your $50 a month, you're asking? Well, in short, there is a lot. There are live classes, there are pre-recorded classes, there is the ability to work out with other people in the Tonal community. And I feel that the community aspect of this thing is really, really good. There are a ton of classes in a lot of different categories. And they extend beyond, like many of these services, just what the Tonal can do. So if we go to workouts, you can see there's dance cardio and kickboxing. Some of this stuff doesn't require the Tonal at all. They're trying to justify the rather expensive $50 per month. But I think that of all the services, this one gets the closest because, for example, if we go into the hits section, there are hundreds of classes. Like, this thing never ends. There are thousands of classes available on Tonal, and on other services, there's just not that depth. That adds a lot of value to this machine. But what's best about it, we get to the question, well, what if I don't want to pay $50 a month? Does this turn into a paperweight? No. You do lose the classes and you do lose the form feedback, which if you're a beginner, you're probably going to want. But after you've been using the machine for a year, you can just go to the regular weightlifting functionality. You can select your own movements here on screen, or you can even go into the mobile app and set up a workout. Say I want to start with a bench press, and then I want to go to a bent over row, and then I want to do this. You can set how many reps, how many sets, how much weight in each rep and set. It's very, very, very cool. And this machine is the one where I can see myself continuing to use it in 10 years. Because not only is the technology in here amazing, not only is the UI really good, but you frankly, you don't need to pay the $50 a month to get a lot of value out of it. So that's why I love the Tonal, and sadly, the other two machines I have just didn't really hold up in that regard. But first, I want to talk about how this is an extension of my smart home. My smart home is based on HomeKit, and I wanted that to extend here out into the gym, but I didn't want to spend a ton of money on stuff. And so I found a lot of satisfaction from today's sponsor, Aquara, who makes incredible smart home accessories. Now, not only are these smart home accessories just good in general, but they are natively compatible with HomeKit, which is really unique. You can just open up the Home app, you scan a QR code, and that thing is added in HomeKit. It doesn't talk to Aquara servers, it doesn't talk to the internet, it just works locally on your network, and that is freaking awesome. Now, if you're willing to use the official Aquara app, you do get some functionality that's not afforded to you if you just use HomeKit. Now, make no mistake, that doesn't mean that you can't use the devices in HomeKit. I do, and they work perfectly. But the Aquara app adds an additional functionality or two. For example, you can see historical trends over time from all of your sensors, which is really handy. I wish HomeKit did this. It doesn't. The other thing you can do is you can utilize the Camera Hub G3 in its full glory. This camera is fantastic. You can move it. It has several axes of rotation. What would that be? 6 axes? It goes left to right and up and down, which is fantastic. And then it also has other functionalities like an infrared remote control. This can issue commands to your home theater receiver and a bunch of other devices that might not be HomeKit compatible, which is really awesome. There's another thing that's really fantastic about this camera, if you ask me. And number one is that it shows up instantly. This is the fastest camera for me from within HomeKit. And then it also natively supports HomeKit Secure Video, which is excellent. There's two-way communication from within the Home app. It records events. It has facial recognition. It is fantastic. The other thing that this camera does that's really cool is that, well, HomeKit doesn't have support for moving cameras. I wish it did, but it doesn't. And so this gives you the ability to turn on tracking modes. I have human tracking turned on, and I place this in the garage. So even though I use the camera primarily within HomeKit, it will track the person that's coming into the garage and then follow them all the way to the house, which is really, really great. Now, your question might be, well, what can you actually do? What's a practical application of all of these HomeKit sensors through Aquara? Well, for example, I have a vibration sensor here. Right behind this wall, I have mounted my condensing unit for my mini split air conditioner and heat pump. And sometimes mini splits are just kind of a pain in the butt. I have this thermostat that's supposed to issue IR commands, and it does, but sometimes they just don't register. And so when I leave the room, and HomeKit knows that, this sensor turns on. And if it notices that the wall is vibrating when it shouldn't be, it will issue a command to that device to send another command to turn the mini split off. It saves me a lot of money. Then we've got sensors like this. This is a really cool sensor. It is an e-ink display that shows you temperature, humidity, and then your air quality. Now you'll notice the air quality is pretty bad right now, and that's because I'm still off-gassing this rubber flooring that we put in. But I have averaged the temperature of this sensor and the temperature of a sensor I have on the other side of the room mounted to the ceiling, and that creates a gym temperature because you don't have exactly the same temperature in all areas of one room. If these sensors ever show a temperature underneath 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it will automatically turn the mini split on to make sure that the devices in here don't get too cold. Really, really nice. And then last, I have this button. These buttons are the best thing ever because you can just have them run any HomeKit command or any HomeKit automation that you'd like. So if I hold them, it turns the lights off. If I press it once, it turns the lights on and they turn white. And then if I double press it, it will turn the lights in the gym to purple. It works super well. It is very cool, and it's just one of the many things you can do with Aquara devices. Now, Aquara has already announced their commitment to Matter. Any devices you purchase today compatible with their hubs will be compatible with Matter by the end of the year, which is amazing. So they'll have native Matter support, and then all Aquara devices from here on forward will be Matter capable. It is I freaking love Aquara devices. They came asking if I wanted to sponsor, and I was like, I already use your product, so yeah. And man, they are so inexpensive. They work so well, and they're just great. And they work natively with HomeKit, which so many devices don't. I cannot recommend them more. Aquara is today's sponsor. Please go check their stuff out because it is excellent. On to more gear. This next piece of gear is one that I'm currently using the most frequently, but it's also the one that I'm the most disappointed in, and I can see myself not using very much in a couple of months. The reason I say that is because this is really designed for, in my opinion, people who are just returning to physical activity or are doing it for the first time. This is the Tempo Studio, and it is $1,800. What it is a big old touchscreen TV, a mini ITX PC inside. You've got an i5 processor and an NVIDIA 1050 Ti GPU. Pretty respectable hardware because it runs this. This is Tempo's alleged magic. It's called the 3D sensor, and it's basically a newer, more modern Xbox Kinect. I'll talk about that in a minute, but as for actual physical fitness equipment, you really don't get that much. You get 75 pounds worth of plates. Now they are really nice plates, they're rubber coated, and you've got these fancy locking collets, and then they give you two 7.5 pound dumbbells. But other than that, that's all you get for your $1,800, which is quite bananas. Most of the cost is on the PC and on this easel and on this whole system. Now, make no mistake, they will be happy to sell you more hardware, but I'm actually going to demo why this is the whole entire problem with Tempo. If we go into classes, they have a really nice UI that you can organize what exercise you want by equipment and duration and body area. Let's go into equipment. We'll go down to view equipment. This is what I've got, the basic set. Now let's say you go out and buy the squat rack and kettlebell system. This costs a lot of money, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And if I press save, and then I go back, and I go to equipment and kettlebell, I press apply, and there are 10 classes. That's it. And these pieces of equipment have been out for months and months and months. Now it gets even worse. If I go into filters, equipment, and go to squat rack, how many classes do you think there are? 3, 4? 0. There's not one class using the squat rack that they sell you on their website. And I think it's because the system is already so expensive that most people are not going out and buying the additional equipment. And so they're not making classes for that expensive equipment because no one's buying it. And this is the problem with Tempo. Their content selection is just not there. I think in total, there's probably only a couple hundred classes versus Tonal's thousands and thousands of classes. Now, they do have live classes, but there's only 2 per day versus 1 about every hour on the Tonal. And then to make matters worse, many of these classes don't involve the equipment that you're using at all. I'm actually doing a course right now that is a pure cardio course. And like 1 in every 2 or 3 workout sessions, they'll use dumbbells for like maybe 2 minutes out of the 30-minute workout, but the rest of it is just basic cardio. You don't need this fancy piece of equipment at all, especially because those pieces of those exercises, the cardio ones, don't use this 3D sensor, and that's why this whole piece of kit is cool. The 3D sensor, in theory, and it does actually work, is that it's supposed to provide you form feedback. So when you're doing weightlifting, it'll say, hey, you're leaning too far forward. Hey, improve your stance a bit. And it shows you a 3D representation of you on the screen versus what you should look like. That is really handy for someone who, like me, doesn't have really any experience using free weights. But after a few weeks, and after a few months of using this piece of gear, you don't need the 3D sensor anymore because your form is good. There's no reason to prevent injury in the future because you're already doing it. And the value proposition of this machine goes down really quickly, really severely. This is the worst part of all. The $40 a month package is already a pretty egregious compared to Tonal's $50 that has 10 times as much content. But this thing is literally worthless if you don't pay for it. There are no individual exercises you can do like on the Tonal. You have to use the classes or nothing. And if you don't pay for this, it does not work. You don't get form feedback. You get nothing. You have an $1,800 stand for your couple $100 weight set. And that's the problem with the Tempo. I think they know this because they just released a thing called Tempo Move. It's $400 and they give you this exact same weight set, 75 pounds of plates, 2 dumbbells, and it's in this cute little nice fancy good looking enclosure. They want you to pay for a year of the service with the Tempo Move, and instead of using a fancy 3D sensor that's basically an Xbox Kinect with a big old PC, they actually use your iPhone with the Face ID sensor and with the front-facing camera. And there's even a few features that are exclusive to the Tempo Move, like it can, using machine vision, determine how much weight you have on your dumbbells, which this doesn't do. You have to tell it manually what plates are on there. I've heard that it works pretty well. Not quite as well as the 3D sensor on here, but close enough that $400 versus $1,800 is a no-brainer. I think that's actually a pretty good deal if you're trying to look to return to activity because you have to pay for a year of the service. So that's an extra 400 bucks. But in a year, you'll get through many, if not most of the classes and get a lot of value out of it. And then after a year, when you're done with it and you've already done everything there is to learn and to do, then you just quit your service and you end up with a pretty nice weight set that cost you 400 bucks. And that's about what it would cost. This though, no, it doesn't make any sense and I cannot recommend it at all. The last device is the one that I've had the most fun with, but it's also the one that I feel the most wholly unqualified to talk about. This is Lightboxer, and in a sentence, it's Guitar Hero for punching. Now, the boxing community is huge, and it's one of the first that was really quick to get on this kind of gamification and smart gym, track that Peloton started 10 years ago. You've probably heard of Fight Camp. There's a bunch of products on the market targeted at boxing. And my friend, who's really into boxing, says that of all of the products on the market, Lightboxer is the most appealing. So I'll take him at his word. But I've been a little frustrated by it because I don't know anything about boxing. And I'll explain why that's a problem in a minute. The machine in general is very simple. I have the expensive version that I actually do not like. This was the only option until a few months ago. It's this massive platform that, by the way, I'm too tall for. I'm 6'4", and they recommend, I think if you're over 6'2", you get an extension that makes this thing even larger. And I was like, this is already too big. There's a new one that mounts to your studs on the wall, like the Tonal. I think that is a much, much smarter option. But you've got this big old stand. You've got this surface area that is where you actually throw your punches. All of these little bars are LED light tracks. And to the beat of the music, you're supposed to punch. And so there's little tiny LED tracks that light up, and then once they hit the center of the target, you punch the target, and that target uses force sensors to measure how hard you're punching. So not only do you have to throw a bunch of punches, which it tracks, but you have to punch to the beat of a song, which is pretty fun, and then you also have to punch pretty hard, which it tracks. All of these metrics go into their app, which is located on an iPad. This is a Bluetooth device, and that's it. So everything else, the music, the display, that needs to be handled by a tablet. Now they have an app for Android and they have an app for the iPad, but it just sits down here by itself. And that makes the price point of this, which is pretty expensive by the way, a little difficult to muzzle because it's literally just this foam pad with a Bluetooth force sensors on it. I mean, it seems a little overpriced, but the app has gotten a lot better. When I got this originally, I was super frustrated because there were a couple of videos that were like, hey, here's how to do boxing. And then there was the quick playlist with all of the punch tracks. These punch tracks, again, there were a bunch of huge bands, huge hits. You select the songs you want to do in a row, you press play the tracks, it tells you your total time, and then you can punch to the beat of the music in 3 difficulties, beginner, medium, and hard. That was the problem though. I didn't know how to box. And the videos that were telling you how to box were like, hey, here's a 3-minute video that tells you everything you need to know about boxing. Good luck. And I was like, well, frick. Because I'd start throwing punches and I was having fun, but I didn't know if my form was good at all and there was no way to find out. And frankly, I didn't even really know because the video was too short. Now, since then, they have improved this significantly. They have a workout section now that says trainer classes. And inside of a trainer class, there are 3 difficulties, beginner, intermediate, hard. And these are more focused on the principles of boxing. And I have liked that because I need help. I don't know how to box. So that's been a lot better at making me feel more confident in my form. But there's still no form feedback. So unlike the other 2 devices here that'll tell you, hey, you're leaning too far forward, hey, there is no feedback on this app. And so I'm just taking it based on my own perception of what I think my body looks like relative to the trainers, that I'm doing it correctly. And I haven't hurt myself yet, but I've almost been to the point of going to a boxing gym to spend money on 5 to 10 sessions to learn how to box so that I can use this. And at that point, it's like, does that not defeat the purpose of this in the first place? So I don't know. I think if you are interested in boxing and you have some experience with boxing, this can be a really fun device. But if you don't know anything about it, I don't know that I can recommend it all that much. Then we get to the problem of the question of, well, what happens if I stop paying for this? This is fairly expensive month to month. It's almost as much as the other 2 devices. And at that point, you expect to have a lot more content than you're actually being offered. There's a very small number of classes right now, and they're expanding, but you're mostly paying for the music. And so it's only boxing. There's no cardio, there's no strength training. I mean, there is because of boxing, but there's no meditation. All these other categories that those other devices try to cover to warrant their monthly cost, this doesn't. It's only punching these targets. And then the problem with it is if you decide to stop paying, this thing becomes basically worthless. You can play 20 royalty-free tracks, but that's it. No more after that. What I think would be a far more compelling option and would be able to get people like me to recommend this is to have the really well done tracks that are done by the Lightboxer team, but maybe open source tools to have the community make their own songs. If there were community driven songs that you could use without paying month to month, this would be a much stronger recommendation from me. But it's just hard because it's too expensive for what it offers. And if you stop paying, it's essentially worthless. And that's a real shame because I do think it's a cool product, even though I suck at boxing. Ultimately, I don't think any of this smart gym equipment is strictly necessary. And if I was going back in time, I would frankly probably only buy the Tonal and then maybe a spin bike that was dumb and a couple of other non-smart equipment. The Tonal is unique in the sense that I think it offers a really good catalog of content for the $50 a month that seems worth it to me. But if you decide to stop paying after a year, you still have a really, really excellent cable machine that will work for years and years and years into the future. And that's not something that can be said about the other devices that I've used. And these are some of the better ones out there. Even the Tonal, though, is not really a good value. You would get much more bang for your buck by joining your local gym for $15 or $20 a month, or spending $10 for Apple Fitness. And frankly, you don't even need to do that. Some of the best exercise is free. Go run around the block, go load up a YouTube video with a yoga instructor on it. That's where the real value is. And I think in 10 to 15 years, we're gonna look back at this fad that was subscription fitness hardware and think to ourselves, man, that was pretty wasteful. But at least I'll have my Tonal while I say that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you didn't, well, that other button seems to work okay too. Get subscribed for more awesome videos like this one. Our next video is incredible, so hang on, you're in for a treat. But most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy. See you later, folks.